Chu and Lu Xing had high strength and they both passed through the Black Tower's first floor. They came to Xiao Jitong and naturally joined the newly reborn Nanjing group, becoming members. Xiao Jitong's words were reasonable and Fu Wenzheng couldn't refute them, so he decided to leave Nanjing with Tang Mo and Fu Wenduo. Thus, the new Nanjing group had more than 30 members. The members of the Nanjing group didn't react as much as Fu Wenzheng imagined when they found out Fu Wenduo's identity. They smiled at the youngest teammate who was able to leave, but it was hard to cover up the exhaustion behind their smiles. The sudden big escape game drained all their energies. Are stowaways bad people? Xiao Jitong smiled at his cousin and pointed to the woman in black standing next to him. Ning Ning is a stowaway, but she didn't become one because she liked killing. She isn't a bad person. But your words. Mr. Fu and Mr. Tang fought against you? I'd like to hear what happened. Xiao Jitong said good things about Fu Wenduo only to later dig a hole for Tang Mo and Fu Wenduo. He smiled at Tang Mo. Tang Mo raised an eyebrow and talked about the strange circus. He had wanted to talk about it before and now he had a chance. Chu and Lu Xing realized after hearing Tang Mo's explanation. Lu Xing said, there is something like this. Placing the players against each other. Does the Black Tower lack all morality? Xiao Jitong was more concerned about something else. The Black Tower can make players a boss that fights other players. There were 21 first-floor players and 2 second-floor Black Tower players. At first glance, the two of you were at a disadvantage. However, Tang Mo and Fu Wenduo got the monster cage from the beginning and the other players didn't know what the monster was. There is also the strange circus and the mysterious leader behind them. They could borrow the power of the Black Tower world. Tang Mo gazed at Xiao Jitong. Smart people saw things differently from others. At the end of the circus game, Tang Mo and Fu Wenduo had discussed it privately. If their plan was unsuccessfully, they would contact the circus for help. They would use the power of the circus to protect the earthworm and finish the game. Once the misunderstanding was dismissed, Tang Mo and Fu Wenduo took Fu Wenzheng to leave. Chu and Lu Xing joined the Nanjing group and listened to Xiao Jitong's next plan. This misunderstanding might have been resolved by Tang Mo and Fu Wenduo had been pitted against the Chu duo in the strange circus game. Lu Xing looked very awkward as he looked back and forth between Tang Mo and Fu Wenduo, inwardly feeling very depressed. Chu's eyes were focused on Tang Mo and Fu Wenduo's hands. It wasn't 1 minute. Was it 5 minutes? No, it was half an hour. More than 30 players stood together closely. If a person didn't pay attention, it was hard to discover that Tang Mo and Fu Wenduo were holding hands. It would just look like they were standing closely together. However, Chu found out. It was like finding a grain of brown rice among white rice. At first glance, it couldn't be seen at all, but once it was found, Chu's gaze couldn't be removed from the grain. 2 girls holding hands might be good feelings, but 2 men holding hands, this was beyond a good friendship. They were holding hands for so long that it didn't seem like a joke. Chu's mind was full of strange ideas and she finally looked meaningfully at Tang Mo. Tang Mo sensed her gaze and looked back strangely. Anku, gender isn't a problem. Tang Mo, are you still angry about the circus thing? The 2 people smiled and nodded. They thought that the other side understood their meaning. Tang Mo and Fu Wenduo would leave tomorrow, so they went back to Fu Wenzhen's room for him to collect his things. He didn't have many things to bring, just some props and daily necessities. Tang Mo saw a few bottles of Nongfu mineral water in his water, the same as the ones Xiao Jitong often used. Last night, at Chai Rong and Ning Ning's strong request, Xiao Jitong used the mineral water to treat the wound on his face. Ning Ning felt it was too unsightly and looked awkward. Chai Rong didn't want Xiao Jitong's face to scar, always reminding him of the garbage cleaning game. Originally, Xiao Jitong wanted to leave it for a few days, but the Nanjing members unanimously opposed it. He could only listen to the majority and heal the injury. Tang Mo looked at the bottles of Nongfu mineral water and asked, the Nanjing group has a lot of these mineral water bottles. Fu Wenzheng said, yes, there are quite a lot. They should have more than 100 bottles left. The Nanjing players can use props or intelligence to gain it. Tang Mo wondered, can we also use the information to exchange it? The earthworm's tier was more practical, but there was only one more chance to use it. From the moment the earth went online to the present, Tang Mo relied on his physical ability to heal his wounds. The Nongfu water could speed up the rate of recovery. It was less effective than the earthworm's tears, but it was still a good prop. The child made a strange expression at his words. Fu Wenzheng looked at Tang Mo and said, after a long time, why would you exchange intelligence for this? Tang Mo replied, we don't have any healing props. Tang Mo and Fu Wenduo had gone through their props a few days ago and had mostly killing type weapons. There were few auxiliary props. Then Fu Wenzhen's meaning. Tang Mo asked, you can directly take a few bottles. They had a relationship with Xiao Jitong and Fu Wenzheng was a member of the Nanjing group. It was reasonable for him to directly take a few bottles. Who would have expected Fu Wenzheng to say in the next second, this is my ability? Tang Mo said, this is originally your ability, then we can really take. His voice stopped and Tang Mo stared at the child with a startled expression. Your ability? Fu Wenzheng nodded. The child raised his right hand. He took a plastic basin from under the bed and placed his right hand over the plastic basin. A clear stream of water gushed from his palm. It continued to flow and soon filled the whole basin. Then Fu Wenzheng took out a large funnel and several Nongfu mineral water bottles from under his bed. He filled 5 bottles in the blink of an eye. He handed it to Tang Mo. Yes, this is my ability. Tang Mo, it was his ability. Fu Wenduo let out a low laugh. Tang Mo and Fu Wenzheng turned to look at him. Fu Wenduo let out a faint sigh. It is slightly useful. Fu Wenzheng wanted to ask how it was slightly useful. It was obviously very useful. Captain Xiao said his ability was very powerful. If it could be upgraded like Captain Chai and Ning Ning, maybe the mineral water could produce human bones in the future. However, he saw his older brother's restrained smile and closed his mouth. While feeling angry, a little joy and smugness emerged in the heart of the child. This was the first time that his eldest brother had praised him. Fu Wenzheng packed up his things and laid mattresses and blankets on the ground for Tang Mo and Fu Wenduo. The three of them would leave tomorrow and would stay in Nanjing for one more night. Tang Mo didn't let a child make the bed for himself. He went forward and wanted to help. He barely moved when Fu Wenduo released his hand and spoke to Fu Wenzheng in a calm mood. Sell more of the mineral water before we go. Fu Wenzheng couldn't respond for a moment before exclaiming, ah. Sell them to Chai Rong and Xiao Jitong. Fu Wenduo paused before lying on one side of the mattress. How much mineral water did you give them before? Fu Wenzheng answered honestly. Hundreds of bottles? It is probably a few hundred of these Nongfu mineral water bottles. Oh, it is child labor. Fu Wenzheng cautiously reminded, Big brother, they are my teammates. Fu Wenduo said, they aren't teammates now. Make new ones and sell them in exchange for information. I want to be teammates with Captain Chai instead of you. Fu Wenzheng didn't dare speak. His eyes were depressed but he obediently made new bottles of mineral water. Tang Mo couldn't help smiling when he saw this scene. His right hand moved slightly. A hot temperature seemed to remain between his fingers. Fu Wenduo let go very suddenly and decisively but Tang Mo wasn't surprised. In the dim light, the tall man moved to lay a blanket over the mattress, smoothly every corner neatly. He was very fast, as if he had done similar things in the past. In fact, Tang Mo and Fu Wenduo's physical fitness meant they didn't need to sleep tonight. However, the child was different so Fu Wenduo didn't object. This was kindness to the child. In some ways, Fu Wenduo was a good brother and a good man. Tang Mo's words about Fu Wenduo being a good man to Xiao Jitong wasn't entirely perfunctory. He also realized this fact. Regardless of morality, outlook on life or attitude towards life and death, Tang Mo felt that Fu Wenduo was a good person. He might be even better than Tang Mo. At the very least, Fu Wenduo wouldn't be tempted to go to the Black Tower to angrily kick it. As he thought this, Tang Mo remembered that he would pass by Xinjia Yikao when leaving Nanjing tomorrow. Should he kick the Black Tower when passing by it? Tang Mo felt that his temper actually wasn't very good at all. Are you going to sleep? A low voice was heard. Tang Mo's spirit suddenly recovered. He saw that Fu Wenduo was squatting beside the mattress, his dark eyes steadily gazing at Tang Mo. Tang Mo found that the other person was staring at him for a long time. Fu Wenduo's face was very calm. He shook his head, it doesn't matter if I don't sleep for a few nights. We had been holding hands for a few hours and I still couldn't find out your ability. There are two reasons. First, I gained someone else's ability and the effect is poorer, so the limit is more than the original. It might take more time to get another person's ability. Second, your ability is so powerful that I need more time. Fu Wenduo said, it isn't urgent. It will take 3 days to get to Beijing so we can keep making physical contact on the road. Tang Mo thought, you don't know that touching more intimate parts has a better effect. Outwardly, he sighed and said, okay. Do an experiment with Fu Wenzheng tomorrow. The child making mineral water in the next room suddenly heard his name and became frightened. Big brother, experiment? What experiment? Fu Wenduo didn't blink. An experiment to sell you. Fu Wenzheng, the number of mineral water that the child could produce was limited. In one night, he only made 30 bottles. Fu Wenzheng laid in bed and soon slept. It was after a brutal escape game so Tang Mo felt a big sleepy. He closed his eyes while Fu Wenduo slept not far from him. The sound of the clock ticking was the only thing heard in the silent room. A long time passed before Fu Wenduo whispered, it is better to change our names. My name is known to all Chinese players. Your name isn't well known but Momo is famous among the best players. Tang Mo hadn't fallen asleep. He opened his eyes and thought for a moment. Yes, it makes sense. Will your name be Fu Wengxian? Tang Mo laughed while saying the name. This was even worse than Fu Wenduo. The members of the Nanjing group knew Fu Wenzheng first, which was how they could accept someone called Fu Wengxian. The new name should be something similar that is easier to accept. Your name is Tang Ji. Fu Wenzhen's name should be changed. He will be called, Fu Wenduo stopped to think before saying solemnly, his name is Dichiao. My name will be Victor. Time suddenly stilled as Tang Mo's heart jumped. He couldn't help raising his head and looking at the man next to him. In the darkness, he could only see a shadow. He stared at Fu Wenduo while his heart beat loudly. Why Victor? Tang Mo was about to open his mouth. At this moment, a clear voice was heard from the bed. Brother, why am I called Dichiao? What is this name? The child felt extremely wronged and couldn't restrain himself. Fu Wenduo asked, you aren't asleep. Fu Wenzheng didn't let him change the topic. Brother, why am I called this name? It is a girl's name. It seemed like he hadn't seen Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Isn't your good friend called Xiao Chiao? Chiao is a surname. In Romance of the Three Kingdoms, there were two famous Chiao sisters called Di Chiao and Xiao Chiao. Di Chiao basically means big Chiao while Xiao Chiao is small Chiao. Fu Wenzheng was surprised. Then he soon recovered. He is George Edward. Xiao Chiao is the nickname that Captain Xiao gave him. Xiao Jiao didn't understand anything and didn't know it was the name of a girl. He agreed to Captain Jiao's suggestion. If he knew then he wouldn't let everyone call him that. Oh, then you don't call him that. The silent Fu Wenzheng was dumbfounded. Fu Wenduo wondered, if I remember correctly, your home is on Beijing's third ring road called the Bronze Sparrow Terrace. The Bronze Sparrows are also called Jiao. Fu Wenzheng felt it was convincing. The amused Tang Mo finally laughed. Fu Wenduo and Fu Wenzheng turned their heads when they heard his laugh. Tang Mo wondered, my name is Tang Ji because it is a bit similar. Then why are you called Victor? Tang Mo felt his nerves shake the moment he heard this name. It seemed like an extremely long time since the Earth went online, but it was only a few months. In these months, some people were hidden deep in his memories, making them hard to remember. When he thought about it, his emotions were like a tide. Tang Mo couldn't tell why he liked Victor in the first place. They were clearly separated by a computer. Tang Mo didn't know the other person's age, looks, occupation or even where he lived. But Tang Mo liked this strange yet familiar person. Whenever they played bridge together, Tang Mo trusted him unconditionally. Their spirits collided and it was like the scent of a seductive woman, making Tang Mo gradually addicted and unable to extricate himself. However, these feelings seemed very tiny compared to the brutal Black Tower games of the past few months. Rather than looking for someone whose location was unknown, Tang Mo was more concerned about his own survival. Tang Mo's heart became heavier. Victor might be dead or alive, but Tang Mo would continue to live. Isn't it similar? Tang Mo's thoughts were interrupted. In the darkness, Fu Wenduo looked quietly at him. Wenduo, Victor, isn't it similar when read quickly? TL, characters for Victor are Wei Duo, which is why he says it is similar. Tang Mo was stunned and felt that the thoughts that just flashed through his mind were a bit funny. He mouthed it several times before saying, it is similar. Fu Wenzheng lying in bed heard their conversation and originally wanted to say, brother, that is your English name. However, he had just been bullied by Fu Wenduo and was too depressed to talk. He just closed his eyes and continued to speak. Tang Mo no longer worried about this problem. He didn't know that Fu Wenduo silently watched him for a long time. Without waiting for Tang Mo's words, Fu Wenduo frowned and looked up at the ceiling. It was a sleepless night. The next morning, the Tang Mo trio left. Before leaving, Fu Wenduo told Fu Wenzheng to go and sell the 30 bottles of Nongfu mineral waters for useful information. The child ran with the mineral water. Once he returned, Fu Wenduo looked at him with raised eyebrows. What information did you get? Fu Wenzheng talked quickly. Tang Mo looked at the two brothers and couldn't help smiling. Compared to him, his teammate might have a better temper and was gentler. As they passed the Black Tower, Tang Mo thought of his intention to smash the Black Tower. However, Fu Wenduo and Fu Wenzheng were there. He hesitated before deciding to maintain his image. He had to pay attention to his image in front of Fu Wenduo's younger relative. Tang Mo strode away from the Black Tower, but Fu Wenduo stopped, looking up at the huge tower. His vision moved and Fu Wenduo saw the young woman standing in the distance, gazing at the Black Tower. Tang Mo also noticed the other person. He looked at Ning Ning in the distance and nodded lightly. Ning Ning greeted the Tang Mo trio but didn't say anything else. She sat on a dusty stone, holding her silver bow as she quietly looked up at the Black Tower. She tirelessly looked at the Black Tower. No one knew how long she had been watching and how many times she had seen it. Tang Mo looked at this strange female stowaway before leaving Nanjing. They found a jeep and headed onto the highway. The car drove for a while, Fu Wenzheng sitting in the back seat and staring at the scenery outside the window with curious eyes. He had stayed in Nanjing after the Earth went online and never left. This time, he felt somewhat scared and excited. The car drove for a long time before finally seeing the Black Tower of the next city. Tang Mo looked at the map. That should be the Black Tower of Yangzhou. He paused and turned to the child. Does Ning Ning always like to watch the Black Tower? Fu Wenzheng nodded but then shook his head. Not always. It was since the Christmas Eve instance a few months ago that Ning Ning often went to look at it. At that time, Sister Xiao Tian didn't pass the game and Sister Ning Ning often went to observe the Black Tower. She probably felt that Sister Xiao Tian was just taking part of a long tower attack game and would return. In addition, Sister Ning Ning's feelings towards the Black Tower are very complex since it saved her life. Tang Mo was surprised. Saved her life. Fu Wenduo also looked at Fu Wenzheng with interest through the rearview mirror. Fu Wenzheng replied, yes. Sister Ning Ning is a stowaway. Stowaways are those who killed someone in the 3 days of selection. Brother is a soldier so he should have killed someone on a mission. I guessed this as soon as I heard brother's identity. However, Sister Ning Ning isn't the same. She didn't kill anyone. Tang Mo asked, then how can she be a stowaway? Fu Wenzheng explained, she really didn't kill anyone but technically, she did. In those 3 days, she killed herself. The author has something to say. Tang, every time we play bridge, I feel like I'm being seduced. Old Fu, every time we play bridge, I feel like I'm being seduced +1.